Okay, we have started recording. It is the 22nd of November 2010, and this is Joe Lynam on Joe Lynam, as in Joe B Lynam interviewing Joe G Lynam. Now, Dad, I'm going to start, as it were, at the beginning. Tell us about your earliest memories and what Ireland was like. You were born in 1937, so tell us what Ireland was like and what your memories might have been, for example, of the emergency and of going to school and the experiences of the time.
I can remember searchlights as a child. In other words, these were lights focused on the air, which was obviously to trace foreign or illegal flights, maybe from Germany, I don't know, why else would they be, but this was in the Dublin and Wicklow area, which is my early memories. People, I heard them telling us about how poor we were, but there was one thing is, we were never cold and we were never hungry. My father would come in with pheasants and fish, and we had a butcher living, when we were living in Red Cross, we had a butcher part of the building, so we got cheap cuts all the time. We reared hens, and in those days chickens tasted like chickens. We didn't always call them chickens, we called them cocks or hens or whatever it might be. So hunger, I don't remember ever being hungry. My clothes would have been cut down from maybe my father's uniform, my father being a member of the police, so I was never cold. Now, I obviously wasn't very proud either, because I also wore wedge heels, which were the actual fashion of women. In other words, maybe my sister Myra, when she'd outgrow her shoes, I might wear them. And I remember guys who would maybe in their bare feet laughing at me with the wedge shoes. But as I said, I was never sensitive about it. I never worried about it, because I used to be so sorry for guys walking into work in rough roads in their bare feet, and sometimes you'd see their toes were crooked, and you would know that they had a worse experience earlier.
Would your family be regarded as, of the time, relatively well off?
Well, the fact that there was a constant job, constant salary, my father being a policeman, I would suspect that they would be considered, I'm not sure would it be as high as middle class, maybe lower middle class, or medium rare middle class. There wasn't much competition for style or motor cars or anything like that. My father didn't have a car. We didn't have a radio until I was until the late 40s. I was then 13. We didn't have a television. I didn't have a television as long as for the first 20 years of my life.
So when you came home after school and your sisters came home and all the family were there,
yeah,
what sort of entertainment did you have of an evening? I mean, everybody sits in front of the television now.
My life seemed to have been based on a whole lot of sections of sport. At one stage in my life, I would be very happy to gallop up and down the yard with a make-believe horse between my legs, and I thought I was riding in the Grand National or riding in a race. Or I might have taken a hurling stick and hit balls and go after and look for the balls, hit them back. So I was quite competitive in hurling, even though I was then in a county that most certainly wasn't great at hurling.
This is Wicklow.
Wicklow. And then, let's see what other sport I did. As a very young age then, I would have ridden bareback ponies, neighbours' horses. The horses were like pets. they lived in the yards of other people's houses or something like that, and I go over and maybe put a winkers on it and get up on the horse and ride around on the pony.
And would your mother not having kittens with you up in the back of the
I'm
horse?
amazed. I'm amazed because she was so strict in many ways that I didn't seem to have that sort of strictness like when it came to riding ponies. Or maybe she didn't know. I don't know. There's lots of things we would have done that she wouldn't have known. I remember having birds' nests as well and having nightmares. And I remember my father was coming in, having been working late, and he tells me, he met me on the way out, and all I was saying was nestis, which is my way of saying bird's nests. And as it transpired, a bird's nest that I had come across had been robbed, and the birds had been killed by stones and things like that. That was a bad memory as a child, you know. But that was a sort of.
Would you have been a high maintenance young boy?
No.
You would have been obedient.
Yes.
Is that because you were the son of a guard and discipline was, or was that in your family anyway? Kind of discipline.
I would imagine that it was there anyway. My sisters, most of them went to boarding schools. In fact, nearly all the family went to boarding schools except me. That makes my rest of my family feel that I was the spoiled one. But I didn't think that. I thought I would be better off if I went to boarding school. And that sounds like an insult to my parents, but I had to do all the work. And my sisters were in a convent in Arklow, which at that stage would have been 10 miles away. Hilly roads and rough roads. And I used to cycle in to see them at the weekend, bringing cakes and goodies from home. They didn't think that was a hardship on me. They thought that was almost a joy for me to do, but it wasn't. And then I used to cycle to school from Barndarrig, which was another place we lived in. We lived in a good few places in Wicklow. Red Cross was a tiny little village, and I still have an affection for it. And later on in life, I remember fox hunting from the village of Red Cross, and it always gave me great memories of when I was a child, even though I was only there for a year and a half. Then when I went to live in Barndarrig, I used to cycle into Wicklow town, which was 6.5 miles of not the best roads in the world either. And rain and snow and sleet, and but it never occurred to me that I won't go to school today because the snow on the ground. I often cycled into school, discovered that the school was closed.
That's disappointing after so many miles.
Yeah, but I wouldn't have been disappointed. That would have been a joy.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. You'd imagine then that then the next time it would be snow, that the parents would say, oh no, there was snow, the school would be closed. But I would cycle in hoping it still would be closed.
Right.
That's how much I love school.
In terms of your friends at the time, I mean, we all know today, teenagers hang out together and all that kind of stuff. How did a young man, a young teenager, even 13 or 14 years of age, what did you do to entertain yourself?
I can't remember anybody living near me. I don't remember having a young boy living near me, or young girls. I just remembered we were in isolation. And to this day, if one was driving down to Wexford, I'd pass by where I lived in Barndarrig. The Garda station was one half of the building. The sergeant's quarters, where was my residence, was the other half. And the nearest buildings were the pub, Lil Doyle's it was known as. And also I have hunted from outside Lil Doyle's, and that used to give me great pleasure when I would turn up. And I would see people that I knew as children, now as men, maybe toothless men or bald heads on them, and I used to shout their names, and this caused them terrible distress because somebody out in the hunt would know them, and they didn't know who this was. But invariably they'd turn up in the pub that evening to investigate who this guy was.
And let's go back to the way there was at the time. You were, in terms of your family, of your siblings, where did you come in the pecking order, and who did you get along best with, and who did you get along worst with?
I can't answer that. Funny enough, I couldn't answer the fact that I was third in the family. I was the eldest boy. My next son, the next son in the house, he was he was 10 years younger than me.
Right.
So therefore, yeah. So when I left home, 18, 19, he would have been 9. He would have been a child in my view. So I never was that close to him. My sisters mostly were at boarding schools. So therefore I wasn't that close to them either, I suppose. When eventually I left Barndarg and I went into Wicklow, I kept being on teams all the time. So, and we used to go travelling in a van, that maybe 12 people would be in the one van. There was no safety belts.